Welcome, listeners. Welcome. If you are interested in the infinite ways that technology fails to serve humanity, you've come to the right place. Technology Blows is the name of this techno-pessimist podcast, and the name of me, your host, is Dan Slimin. And today I am truly thrilled to welcome back to the show beloved friend of the pod, software engineer, CJ Horton. CJ, you're back for another two-parter. How are you feeling about that?
I'm glad my jokes about Jira resonated enough with listeners to justify a return engagement.
Yes, I think a lot about Jira and the things that you said about it, and it's filled my heart with frustration with Jira, but love for you.
That's the kind of the optimal, result of making terrible jokes about Jira.
Now, do you, CJ? So I have a serious problem with cookies. If there are cookies in my vicinity, I will eat them compulsively until all the cookies are gone. It doesn't really matter what kind. It doesn't really matter. They could be chocolate chip, is obviously the OG, but I'll fuck up a box of Milanos, sugar cookies, peanut butter, oatmeal raisin even. I'm that much of a cookie freak. I can't stop myself. It's actually created a lot of problems for me in my marriage, which I won't get into. But CJ, what's your relationship with these delightful little butter and sugar bombs that we call cookies?
I'm actually not as much of a cookie fiend as I used to be. At some point, my sweet tooth kind of died off, and so I will eat like maybe 2 or 3 cookies, and then I'm like, I just don't really want any more, which is really a strange development in my life.
That's crazy. I can't imagine what that would feel like. Congratulations. Sometimes I don't even like cookies that much. I just have to put them in my face until there aren't any more cookies. It's almost like I hate them, right? I just need to erase
make them go
from
away.
The world compulsively. Yeah. I love talking about cookies, but we can't just talk about cookies for this whole show as much as I'd like to, because we've got to talk about cookies. CJ, I checked earlier. Right, yeah. I checked earlier, and my browser is currently holding on to cookies from about 1,100 domains, totaling 15 gigabytes of cookies. And approximately 25% of these cookies are for domains I think I've never, ever even navigated to.
So your browser is also a cookie fiend. That's what
true.
I'm getting from this.
That's true. It's made by Google, so it loves cookies. It wants to just collect all the cookies, and then it never destroys them. So they're just sitting there on my hard disk. I have, for this app that we're recording this podcast in, that app is the one with the most gigabytes of cookies. 15 gigabytes of cookies.
Wow. Seems excessive, but I don't do a lot of modern front-end development these days, so I'm having trouble imagining what could possibly even be in 15 gigabytes of cookies for a single website.
Yeah, I tried to figure out what exactly was in there, but they're all stored in Chrome doesn't let you look at the cookies directly. You can find them in a SQLite database on your disk, but I couldn't find the SQLite database, and I lost interest. But that's too many cookies even for me.
Reaching the limits of your cookie fiend-ness.
Yeah. Yeah. No, thank you. But since we're talking about cookies today, we're also going to be talking a lot about the ad industry, right? That's the main thing that I think people associate with cookies is ad companies selling our data by using cookies to track us.
And also clicking so many of those little pop-up banners that are ask you to have an opinion about the cookie.
Particular domain. How about no? Right? How about just don't fucking ever? But that's not a button on it.
Please never.
I don't know. They can't build this stuff. We'll talk about why they can't build that button. But I think personally, modern marketing is one of the worst disasters ever to befall humanity. It's a foulness so pervasive that we no longer even really perceive it most of the time. just like someone in ancient Rome would no longer have perceived the miasma of human waste that hung over the city all summer. We don't notice advertising that's all over us, all over the world, everywhere we go. And I know this is not an original thought. I know I'm not the first person to be like, oh, I hate ads. Ads suck. Nobody likes them, but we just kind of accept them because what else can you do, right?
Literally everything on the web is monetized.
Right.
Almost everything, unless you actually send money personally to a particular organization or person.
Right, like you donate to Wikipedia or archive.org or something.
Or somebody's Patreon, or yeah. But like most blogs and so on, if somebody's going to like actually make a living from creating content on the internet, it is because of ads.
Yeah,
Just pretty
yeah,
bleak.
it's pretty bleak, and we can't do anything about it because our whole society is built around property relations, and property owners you can't stop them from earning passive income by selling ad space, right? And if you don't like it, you know, the subway station has ads plastered everywhere. You can't just walk in the subway station with a bucket of black paint and splash paint everywhere. You get arrested. Trust me.
Sounds like something you know from experience.
It does, doesn't it? So CJ, I don't know if you get this a lot, but people are always asking me if I would go back in time to 1889 and kill baby Hitler. It's sort of like the sci-fi version of the trolley problem, right? Have you ever grappled with this moral riddle? Would you time travel and kill Hitler when he was a baby?
Uh, my answer is kind of unsatisfying. It's just that it's hard to come up with a definite answer to that problem because it's impossible to fully understand the consequences of doing that. Like it's well, this podcast is suddenly getting very very deep.
Well, it's
Um,
admirable to be cautious. I mean, I appreciate that you're right. It could have implications that far that you could never have foreseen.
if you kill baby Hitler, does that simply open up a space for another dictator who is worse?
Right, right, double Hitler.
The old double Hitler, as we say.
Thank you for being a foil to me, because for me, the right answer to this question is yes, absolutely. No, no, no questions asked.
Fair.
Give me the
Also
rock.
fair.
But there's lots of different perspectives on this. But so say I do it, right? Okay, fine. So there I am, standing by the crib, history's greatest monster, safely dead before he could even grow his first little mustache. What's my next move, though? Right? Do I get back in my DeLorean and swoop right back to good old Hitler-free 2025? See, I figure I'm already in Austria-Hungary. Why not stick around, enjoy the lovely countryside, maybe take a yodeling class, and then take a nice leisurely train ride into Vienna? I could probably live very well in Vienna in 1889 because I could just steal Einstein's physics ideas. Just walk up to the head of the University of Vienna's physics department and be like, hey, what's up, man? I'm from the future. Hey, have you ever noticed how if you shoot ultraviolet light at a cathode, it makes a current, but it doesn't work with infrared light? Weird, right? Anyway, if you give me 50,000 florins, I'll tell you why that happens. Oh, also, radium atoms take twice as long to decay if you speed them up to about 86% of the speed of light. Chew on that one and then maybe send me a couple more florins, right? So these guys will pay me. They've got plenty of money. So I could just chill for a while, spend my florins, maybe go to some operas, no reason not to enjoy myself. I got 2 years just to hang out in Vienna. But then, come November of 1891, I would take a walk down to the home of the little newborn nephew of Sigmund Freud named Edward Bernays. Bernays would go on to essentially invent modern advertising, marketing, and public relations. Before Bernays, advertising was really just about telling you how good a product is so that you want the product because it's good, right? Through the work of Bernays and many others, but largely Bernays, advertising becomes about convincing you that a product will make you the kind of person you want to be, right? Which is, if you ask me, what turns it into this horrible disease that it's become. And I'm not saying, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying I'd kill baby Edward Bernays. I don't think I'm a natural at killing babies. I think probably having killed one baby would have taken the wind out of my sails. It probably made me very sad. So I wouldn't kill him. But would I slow him down a little bit, right? Would I put a little peach schnapps in his peach baby food? I think I could do that. Just get just a little bit of brain damage, make him a little dumber, right? I mean, it's self-defense. His influence is going to give the entire world low-grade brain damage, essentially. So, why not?
We get to find out whether or not this type of advertising is inevitable. Like if he doesn't invent it, will somebody else? Um,
Yeah, I mean, well,
um,
sure, maybe Albert Lasker. So that's a good point. So
um.
Albert Lasker maybe had a deeper impact on advertising proper. And I know about Albert Lasker, but like, do the math. I have to kill Hitler first, right? That's a given. And then I should
Right,
probably
right.
lay low for at least a year before I travel internationally, since I've just attacked my second baby. So that puts us at 1892. Albert Lasker was born in 1880. So by the time I get to Albert Lasker, he's 12 at the youngest. Uh, right? Like, this is a very different proposition from smothering an infant. Now I'm fighting a 12-year-old, a Texas 12-year-old. I'm not confident I can win that fight.
This is I feel like this is maybe getting out of hand a little bit. The killing of children to solve all
Yeah,
of the world's problems. Huh.
I agree. It gets out of hand. It gets out of hand pretty fast, which is why I haven't done it yet.
I assume that there's the lack of a time machine is also a
Well, a lack of a time machine is also a major factor. Yeah.
small
Um,
obstacle.
right. Right. And I may also have ruined 2025, right? Like, if I go back to 20, I just advanced physics by 15 years, right? Maybe Austria-Hungary now has the atom bomb by World War One. I could have fucked up history even way worse than if I had just not messed with things. So, who knows? But anyway, as you say, I don't have a time machine anyway, so for now, this is all moot. Our actual story about cookies begins in the 1990s. And to really paint a picture of how unavoidable advertising is by the 1990s, here's Philip J. Fry from the animated series Futurama, upon learning that in the year 3000, companies now have technology to beam advertisements directly into your dreams.
Didn't you have ads in the 20th century?
Well, sure, but not in our dreams. Only on TV and radio. And in magazines. And movies. And at ball games. And on buses. And milk cartons. And t-shirts. And bananas. And written on the sky. But not in dreams. No siree.
So Fry's list is pretty good, but since that episode aired, I would add a few more things to the list of places where you see advertisements all the time. That includes gas pumps, in space, if you count the Tesla Roadster that Elon Musk sent up there and played some Spotify song. It was a big ad for SpaceX. And then, of course, websites. You use these things? You've been on a website?
I am familiar with the concept of a
Yeah.
website.
Once you build
Once or
enough of them, you
twice, you know.
sort of like lose the taste for visiting them, right?
Right, recreational web browsing.
Yeah, it just doesn't do it for you anymore. Anyway, so let's talk about websites. I think you're about my age. You must remember the early internet. How old were you when you first got on the internet?
Oh man, I want to say somewhere around middle school. Middle school is the first time I remember actually
Yeah,
browsing the internet, like just going on, kind of noodling around, like visiting websites.
right, right. Yeah, it was about 1994, 1995 for me, which was around I was like 10 or 11, when my family first got an internet connection.
Say my family also had dial-up during this period, so that kind of limited
Oh
my.
yeah, oh yeah. I would spend. I remember there was a Hawaiian Punch ad that I saw on TV where it was like, go to this website and you could download a whole, like, essentially audio play about the Hawaiian Punch guy, and I was like, I have to have it, and it took like 3 hours to download this 2-minute long audio file.
Was it worth it?
Um, worth it, and of course everything was worth it, and it immediately came to dominate my life. The internet. I mean, I could email my friends, I could learn about bands, I could look up video game cheat codes, And and don't get me started on porn. I mean, wow. What a time to be alive. It was wonderful. The World Wide Web just felt like a wonderful free place where you could get information and learn from different people around the world. There weren't really any stores yet, or web forums, or Wikipedia, or fucking websites you have to log into to make an appointment for your haircut or whatever. And that's because these kinds of things are extremely hard to build without what we call session state. So what's session state? You know what session state is, but I think we all intuitively know. Yeah, I think we all intuitively know what state is. We talk about the state of the world, the state of the union. My parents used to get on my case about the state of my bedroom. State is just the totality of how something is at a given moment. And that's the sense in which we mean state when we talk about the web. So in 1993 on the web, there were only two kinds of state. So you had your client state, the state which is the state of your browser. Client basically means browser. So this is things like what site you have open, what images you have cached, where all the shapes and text on your web pages are being displayed. That's stuff that's all in your browser. And then you have server state, the state of the web server that serves you up content. That state is usually stored in it's in memory on the server, and there's a big database usually of data that's persistent. And that was it. That was all the state. Each time your browser made a web request for imdb.com, which surprisingly did exist in 1993, it was like you were an entirely new person to the server, and so was everyone else, which meant the server couldn't distinguish between people, and it had no idea who you were. You would just get the same content everybody else got, right?
Honestly, like from the perspective of 2025, kind of beautiful. Like, man, just every request is like this brand new wide open space of
it's
what
very
could
beautiful.
This request possibly be coming from. Oh,
that was kind of nice. Like you say, like you get information trivially, and you don't have to worry about logging into anything or whatever. But that also meant that you couldn't save any of your IMDb preferences, right? You couldn't, get all those personalized recommendations that we all get from IMDb, notifications when movies on your watch list open in theaters. You couldn't vote in IMDb polls. All these modern IMDb features that are so essential to everyone's modern life, right?
As you're saying this, I'm realizing that I have never done anything on IMDb other than look up a specific movie and see if if the particular cast member I'm thinking of was in it or not.
Yeah, same.
I didn't even know that you could log into IMDb, though.
Yeah, I didn't either.
As you say,
it
makes sense.
The app is always asking me for my credentials, and I'm always telling it, like, I just want to know if Tom Cruise was in this stupid fucking movie. So, all you could do on it was just get information about movies and then leave, right? And so during this early era, with only client state and server state, a lot of web applications that we would take for granted even a handful of years later were impossible to build, or at least extremely hard to build. Think about the shopping cart experience, right? You find an item you want, you click add to cart, and it gets stored in your cart while you keep poking around the store, going to different pages. How could you build that with only client state and server state?
You would have to purchase each product in a completely separate transaction, which honestly, as I say that out loud, again, might not be the worst thing in the world, but
yeah, now we're cooking with gas,
right? We're just gonna fix the whole web right here.
Yeah, so we just didn't have shopping carts on websites. We just didn't have them, and it was widely known among web enthusiasts and software engineers that it would be very useful to have some kind of consistency across multiple web requests between a user and a website. It was everybody was talking about it, but every solution people came up with was rejected. Mostly, they were rejected because of privacy considerations. So, for example, one of the things people talked about was, hey, what if a browser has a unique identifier that never changes? Then websites can keep track of, browser 17's shopping cart and browser 94's shopping cart and so on.
Oh
What do you
man,
think about that?
that's another sort of like quaint early internet like remember when people were worried about privacy
Right,
not being
right.
identifiable across websites. Huh.
Yeah, I mean, um, we've always been worried about way back from the beginning. We've been people who've been worried about privacy, and a lot of this story about cookies is how the advertising industry
How we lost that
made
battle.
an end run around those people.
Yeah, it is kind of a nice idea though. To be able to kind of imagine a world where like you could and this information would not be used for nefarious purposes.
Right, right.
Your browser might have a unique ID that identifies you to websites, and you won't have to log into each one separately. But then you poke at that a
Don't
tiny bit
worry.
more, and it turns into a nightmare.
The people making these websites all just care about knowledge and bringing knowledge to people.
Exactly. They would never, correlate your activity across websites to.
Give me a break. You're being paranoid.
Oh,
Yeah, so I'm glad we didn't do that one. That's a privacy nightmare. Instead, we searched around for some kind of compromise. And in 1994, the person who finally cut the Gordian knot and gave us the compromise that stuck for session state was a 20-year-old college dropout named Lou Montulli. Lou was a recent college dropout working for Netscape on their browser, Netscape Navigator. He was employee number 9 at Netscape, and Netscape was a thrilling place for a young software engineer to work. It had a bold vision of a decentralized World Wide Web where everyone could own their own little slice of their own little island of the internet, and the islands would be connected by ships. Could sail from one island to the other, right? Not permanent bridges. You could go to somebody else's island and check out what's on their island. Kind of like Animal Crossing, the early vision of the internet.
exactly what I was thinking
That
of.
Netscape had. It was not everyone's vision. Yeah. I've never played Animal Crossing, but my wife played probably 400 hours of it, so I know a little bit about Animal Crossing. So Netscape. So what distinguished? So this vision, this decentralized vision, distinguished Netscape from, say, America Online. AOL's attitude was like, we are the web. The web is us. You'd open AOL and search for keywords, and you'd land on AOL's content or some closely affiliated site. It would try to keep you like inside AOL's small ring of trusted content providers, right?
Honestly, the only piece of AOL software I remember is AOL Instant Messenger, which is kind of its own little.
I'll definitely do an episode on AOL Instant Messenger sometime. I loved it, but there's a very seedy story there.
A different episode, perhaps. Oh.
Yeah, different episode. Right. So Netscape envisioned the web instead of being centralized as being distributed over many independent sites connected to one another only through like hyperlinks and shared protocols that were established among people, which is great. I think like that's a much better vision for what the internet should be like. However, this decentralized model makes the state problem even harder for Netscape than it is for AOL. Because like if as a user you're interacting with many different websites and you don't have prior trust relationships with any of them, then how can you establish sessions in order to, for example, buy things from them or use their discussion forum or whatever you want to do without giving them personal data that they can use to track your private information?
A tricky problem.
Exactly. And so Lou Montulli is the guy who comes up with the solution to this problem. And that solution, which is quite elegant, is called the cookie. And it works like this. You make a request. So let's say you're shopping on kazoos.com. Let's say you're shopping on fancykazoos.com and you make a web request to add a new, elephant ivory kazoo to your shopping cart. The website sends a response to the request that you made, tacks on a new header called set cookie. A header's like a little bit of metadata that tags along with web requests and responses and tells you things other than the main content of what the transaction. So the main part of a request says like, I want the web page specified by this address, but the request also includes some number of headers that specify how you want the page returned, what kind of browser you're using, and stuff like that, right? Do you have a favorite HTTP header?
I am fond of Set Cookie as a header.
It's really good.
It's pretty solid. There's so many good
it's one
ones.
of the best.
Authorization,
Authorization kicks
all
ass.
time. Great one.
Here, let's see.
Oh.
I'm going to load. I'm not a huge fan of the date header. I think that's a little unnecessary. Here, let's see. I'm going to load example.com and see what headers I get. Maybe it'll remind me of all my favorite HTTP headers. Last modified rules.
It's a great one. Love last modified.
They're great. I love HTTP headers. Great invention. So there's this new cookie now that Lou Montulli is saying everybody should start setting called set cookie. And all this header does is in the response, you get a set cookie header and it says, maybe you requested youtube.com and youtube.com sends you a header in your response that says set cookie and then some text. And that text can be any text that the server wants to send you in the set cookie header, essentially. There's a little bit of formatting to it. There's like a couple pieces of even sub metadata inside the header field, but the like nut of the set cookie header is just an arbitrary block of text, and your browser is now supposed to hold on to that piece of text, save it in memory or save it in disk for later, and then when you click something else on the page, or you load another page part of the page, and you, for example, you go to the add to cart page for that elephant ivory kazoo you were looking at, and by the way, CJ, you should really look into the environmental impact of all these endangered species kazoos you keep ordering. I'll send you a New Yorker article about it. It's really irresponsible. So you click add to cart, and the server says, okay, I've added that to the cart, and also includes a header that says set cookie, set dash cookie, no spaces, with the value like shopping cart contains one ivory kazoo. And your browser saves that locally in the client state, so that when you make your next request to forbiddenkazoos.com or whatever it was, your browser sends another new request header with its request, and that header just says cookie, and it echoes back the contents of the cookie that was set by the set cookie header earlier.
So I feel like in this scenario, the cookies are rapidly becoming a liability for me, purchasing these kazoos made of illegal materials. So I don't know if this is session state is a good thing for me in this scenario. Oh.
Yeah, if the FBI finds your cookies and it says you're ordering 20 plutonium kazoos, they're gonna have a lot of questions. Yeah, but also it allows you to build lots of incredible things, right? Like it's pretty ingenious, and also it's a little bit of a privacy boon compared to the other ideas that they had, because like you're not sending the server anything about yourself. You're not telling it anything about yourself. It's coming up with a string that it wants you to repeat back to it, right?
Yeah. So the protocol can remain stateless, but you can still you're not stuck with this as fun as it is to imagine the server just sort of like having no idea who anybody is on any particular request. Right. It's kind of a nice. It's really pretty elegant little bit of technology.
It is
having the client echo back these little bits of state to the server.
It is. I'm not mad at it as an invention. I think it's pretty great. So like you don't have to give the server any information about yourself in order to be logged in or tracked, but you might decide to give the website other information like your name or your credit card number or your mother's maiden name, and then of course they can input in their database. They can associate that information you gave them with your cookie. By the way, CJ, what's your mother's maiden name? Never mind. Don't answer that.
You're just. Now I see this podcast as a whole front, social engineering front.
Damn it! I fucked up with the last. I fumbled the bag at the last minute.
It was a long setup, but
Well, listeners, everybody, just write in. Tell me your mother's maiden names. Maybe that'll.
And the street you grew up on.
Yes. If you grew up on a street, yes. So actually, I think cookies are pretty good, and they're pretty good for privacy. Now, why is it called a cookie though? What does any of this have to do with those sugary biscuits that we eat for dessert sometimes? Well, Lou Montulli got the name for something he read in a software textbook, but he's not sure which one, and he can't find it anymore. Some cursory searching on Google Books turns up The Joy of X by Niall Mansfield, published in 1993, which may be it. I'm not sure this is the book, but it does mention a technique called magic cookie. And this is where the server gives the client an arbitrary string of data. And then when the client connects, it's supposed to pass that data back to the server unaltered. And that's how the server knows that the client is allowed to connect to it, because it has the secret data from earlier. That's still though, but go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, I that doesn't actually explain why it's called a cookie specifically.
No, it really fucking doesn't, does it? Yeah, why would you call that a cookie?
I was so ready for the reveal, and I feel somewhat unsatisfied. Oh,
this is the explanation you find everywhere. It's like, oh, they're called cookies because he found it in a book, and it was a thing called a cookie in the book, and it's like, okay, but why though? Well, here's Lou Montulli in a 2023 interview explaining it.
This concept was called a cookie or a magic cookie. And it's really akin to a fortune cookie, in which you have a message written into a cookie or a fortune cookie, and then that is held by somebody, and then the cookie is returned back to that person, and the message is read at that point.
Still mildly unsatisfying explanation of the name, but I'll take it.
That's not how fortune cookies fucking work. I've never gone to a Chinese restaurant and gotten a fortune cookie, and then when the waiter comes back later, I have to give the fortune cookie back to her unopened so she can verify that the fortune inside was the same fortune she gave me earlier.
So this would be kind of a fun ritual, I have to say.
Yeah, sure.
Here's a fortune cookie. Remember to give this back to me before I leave. What? Or before you leave.
Sure, but it would be called something else.
Yes. I can see the fortune cookie analogy where there's there is some secret information hidden inside this thing, and you have to break it open to see it. But yeah, the cookie exchange part is pretty hilarious.
You're more charitable than I am to metaphors. Yeah, and that's as far as this is the guy, and this is the most he says about why it's called that. So I don't fucking know.
I love how many things like that there are in computing history, where it's like, why is it called this, or why does it work that way? And it's like, I just, I had to call it something. Right. I was thinking about fortune cookies, so no, it's called.
Yeah, I was hungry. I wanted to go out for noodles. Yeah. It's like we're using Bugzilla, and so we're going to call it our tool Gozilla, and now it's called Gojira, and now it's called Jira. Right? Doesn't have to make sense. That's how names are, I guess. Anyway, so even though it has an inappropriate name, this cookie mechanism that Lou Montulli invents is wildly useful. You can use it to build so many kinds of web applications that couldn't exist before. Now that the server can keep track of data about the user across a sequence of requests, we can build shopping carts, reading apps that bookmark your place, paid subscriptions, web games that take longer than one sitting to play, chat rooms, forums, email clients, you name it. It'll all be on the web now because of this extremely important invention, the cookie. By the way, did you notice that sexy music earlier?
Did. Oh.
Let's hear it again just to make sure we remember how sexy it was. Yeah, music like that really makes you wonder, did the editor of this interview want to fuck Lou Montulli? Well, if they did want to fuck Lou Montulli, they're not alone, because in 1999, Lou Montulli was one of the runners-up for People Magazine's Sexiest Man Alive award. He was named the Sexiest Internet Mogul.
Yeah. Now I gotta know who else was competing for that category.
I don't know who else was in the Internet Mogul category. It was 1999. I can't imagine they would put Bill Gates on the list.
Surely not.
Surely not Bill Gates. I don't know. I don't. They're
I
not
mean,
sexy to
there's
me.
no accounting for taste, but
The winner for that year was Richard Gere. So no shame to Lou Montulli. Can't be Richard Gere for sexy. Also, The Rock was one of the runners-up, now known as Dwayne Johnson.
what a strange time.
Yeah, what a strange time. It's like
there was an entire. I'm still stuck on the fact that there was an entire subcategory of internet moguls.
Yeah.
In the sexiest men alive.
Yeah. Peter Thiel.
Field.
Peter Thiel was around then. Maybe it could have been Peter Thiel instead, but it was Lou Montulli. Anyway, so he comes up with this cookie idea, and initially he just circulates his proposal internally at Netscape, and his coworkers love it. It goes out in October of 1994 as part of Netscape Navigator. And websites start using cookies right away because of all the awesome shit I just listed that they can build now. So Lou's cookie invention was hugely popular, and it attracts the attention of the IETF, which is the Internet Engineering Task Force. So the IETF is a volunteer organization of mostly software engineers and researchers who collaborate mostly by email to develop standards for the web. And the IETF wants to write some standards around what cookies are and how they work, right? Because at this point, the only source of truth about what cookies are and how they work is Netscape Navigator. There are other browsers. There's Mosaic, which was developed by a sentient hyper-libertarian egg named Mark Andreessen. Microsoft is working on a browser. And then there's all this web server software like Apache that is going to be responsible for sending the set cookie headers. All this stuff has to agree on how to behave and how to communicate for cookies to work consistently, right? So the IETF wants to write a well thought out, well-specified standard for how session state is going to work on the web so that all the clients and servers will agree on exactly how to do things. Otherwise, it would just be chaos.
At this point, is this a kind of a new idea? And had we gotten to the point of like any kind of browser standardization at all before this? Or were cookies the primary thing that was kind of
so they're all. It's not a new idea.
Drove. This.
It's not a new idea because the IETF has been working on. I mean, they've been around for a long time. Coming up first, they had to come up with like the layer 2 protocols, and then they had to come up with the layer 3 protocols, and by this time they've gotten to HTTP, right? And they've written a lot on what HTTP is and how HTTP works. There's other headers that the IETF has defined in their documents, right? But cookies became one of the hardest ones for them to write a standard on. They're already, by this point, by December of 1995, when the IETF gets to writing this document, there are already hundreds of websites using cookies. Hundreds. Can you believe it, CJ? Hundreds of websites. That's so many websites.
Literally hundreds. There are dozens of them. Sorry.
Yeah.
Oh.
It's very funny to read these emails because you can still go back and read all the emails. The IETF publishes all of their emails in their working groups, and they archive them online. So I went back and I read a bunch of the emails from the beginning of this RFC process, and you get to see the whole conversation among all the people, which is a fascinating resource.
It is interesting to know. I didn't realize that this creating the spec for cookies was kind of like a thing that happened after they were starting to be used.
Yeah.
Which is, not an uncommon thing to happen in general, as like somebody comes up with this cool idea for, a new technique, and then start using it, and then after the fact, it's like, oh wait, we need to actually standardize this and sort of agree on
right.
how it's going to be used.
Hold
but it was not an upfront design.
Exactly. Yeah, and so the IETF is kind of playing catch up here, as they often are. And so Lou Montulli starts working with David Crystal of Bell Labs under the auspices of the IETF on an RFC for session state management. RFC stands for Request for Comments. And an RFC is a document usually like 10 to 20 pages long that specifies how a given protocol on the web will work. CJ, are you familiar with RFCs?
Again, like websites, I am generally familiar with the idea. I've seen one or two in my time.
I'm kidding, of course, because
written a handful.
CJ and I have both written and read lots and lots of RFCs during our time working together, and we are fucking sick of RFCs.
They're a great invention and also a terrible invention.
That's right, much like cookies.
Yes, exactly.
But they're right. They're very useful. You need them.
I'm sure this RFC is extremely tedious, like all of the best RFCs are.
If it's not tedious, what's the point?
Exactly.
It's incredibly grueling to write this RFC. Writing an RFC, any RFC, involves a ton of back and forth discussion and edits and more discussion and more edits, and that goes double for cookies because everybody has an opinion about this, and the idea is super, super controversial. Most people recognize the need for some protocol to serve this function of session state, but the question of what exactly it should be and how exactly it should work become the subject of many long email threads. It's a democratic process, and democracy is hard.
Governing by consensus is always its own challenge.
Exactly. That's part of the thing. You have to come up with. We have to reach a rough consensus, and a lot of the discussions in the threads are about like, what does rough consensus really mean? Though, would this count as a consensus? Or just shut the fuck up and make the protocol, guys.
I don't actually know how the IETF is there a formal definition of consensus or
not really. Yeah, it's kind of just what it feels like.
A bunch of people arguing with each other until somebody stops. Somebody gets too tired to continue.
Like all democratic processes, right? It's all just stuff we made up, and a lot of latitude is left to the people in the process to convince each other that things are acceptable, right?
Oh.
So I read one of these threads from December of 1995. So right at the very beginning of the cookie RFC project, it has the subject "making progress on state info," which is a very funny subject for this process that would end up taking like 2.5 years. And in the first email in this thread, David Crystal says, quote, "Whether or not there's a rough consensus, there's another important issue. Will the browser vendors actually implement it? Absent their acceptance, this whole exercise is academic." Yes.
A good point. Surprising it's only coming up well into the discussion.
Great point, Dave Crystal. Let's put a pin in that. Also in this email thread is a Dutch engineer named Koen Holtman. And near the end of this email thread, I like this guy. He seems like kind of a pain in the ass. I like him. And near the end of this email thread, Holtman posts a long response containing the incredibly prophetic warning: if less ethical service providers implement a large-scale user tracking scheme using persistent cookies, the discovery of that scheme and subsequent media coverage may cause a crisis in user trust that will impact on the acceptance of all web applications.
Oh, man.
That sounds bad, right?
Talk about the gift of prophecy. Wow.
Yeah.
Partial prophecy, I guess.
Spot fucking on in December 1995. Too bad he couldn't do anything about it. Eventually, in February of 1997, the IETF publishes this RFC, which is RFC 2109. And contrary to the modern reputation of cookies, it has a lot of very good and reasonable privacy protections in it. Any given cookie is supposed to be allowed only to be set for a specific domain. So when a server sets a cookie for you, that cookie's domain has to be the same domain that your browser made a request to in the first place. So, for example, say you make a request to your favorite website, www.clownpenis.fart, and the website tries to give you a cookie with the domain of, virus.hacker. RFC 2109 says your browser must reject that cookie because the domain doesn't match. Great idea, right? We don't want clownpenis.fart giving us cookies for virus.hacker.
Very solid.
Yeah, smart. Another protection, and this to me is the most interesting thing in the document, is that by default, browsers should reject any cookie they receive during what's called an unverifiable transaction. So what does that mean? Right.
Yeah, what does that mean?
Transaction just means an exchange between the client and the server, where the client sends a request and the server sends a response to that request. That's a transaction. The RFC says, quote, a transaction is verifiable if the user has the option to review the request URI prior to its use in the transaction. A transaction is unverifiable if the user does not have that option.
Interesting. I'm not sure I know what that means. That actually means in practice.
So say I'm browsing clownpenis.fart again. You just can't keep me off that website. And on clownpenis.fart, there's an image that's hosted by a different domain, edwardbernays.com. So my browser says, oh, let me go fetch that image from edwardbernays.com. That image fetch, when it goes to request that image, that would be an unverifiable transaction because I, the user, didn't get a chance to read that image's URL before my browser went and fetched it.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, that's pretty broadly applicable.
Seems like a great idea, right?
Yeah. It seems like a fantastic addition to the cookie protocol.
Very smart. Very smart.
Can't send cookies to random other websites.
Unfortunately, what he's describing here is the exact way that on the modern web, advertisers track you with third-party cookies. This is exactly how they do it. They put a little tiny image in the page. I mean, they do it a bunch of ways, but one of the main ways is they put a little tiny image in the page that's loaded from their domain, and then you request it, and they give you a cookie when you request it, right?
The infamous Facebook pixel.
The Facebook pixel. Perfect. That's exactly right. That's exactly right.
Oh.
The Facebook pixel. Man, Facebook. I'm writing an episode on the metaverse coming up, and God, I knew Facebook had many crimes to answer for, but it's just crimes all the way down.
Oh man.
Anyway,
this is off topic for the episode, but did you read that? I'm blanking on the name right now, but the book that the insider book about Facebook that came out relatively recently by the person who was at least nominally in charge of Facebook's interactions, like international relations. It is wild.
Okay, I'll find the name of it for me. Send me that. I will read that.
It's wild and very good, but also full of crimes and incredible. Just like Mark Zuckerberg wants to meet this foreign president.
Oh boy, I can't wait. I can't wait to Mark Zuckerberg is one of my very favorite people to talk shit about, so I'm very excited about the metaverse episode. Okay, so they had this unverifiable transactions thing written into the RFC, which is very, very reasonable and would have prevented ad networks from tracking us with third-party cookies across the web. But like I said, it was a real slog to get this RFC out. It took a long time. The first Netscape Navigator release supporting cookies came out in October of 1994, and it wasn't until February of 1997, so 28 months later, that RFC 2109 was published. And meanwhile, in those 28 months, from October 94 to February 97, the following things happened. Amazon.com made its first $10 million in sales. A website called Auction Web, later known as eBay, hosted more than 200,000 auctions. GeoCities registered hundreds of thousands of amateur web homesteaders, they called them, make personal websites on their platform. And software behemoth Microsoft launched their own web browser, Internet Explorer, which had its own implementation of cookies and had grown to about 20% of the browser market share. That all happened within those 28 months. That is a shitload of growth in the World Wide Web over a very, very short period of time, and it's all dependent on cookies.
And I assume at this point the IATF is getting more and more stressed out because they haven't finished this already.
They are shitting themselves in frustration as they watch all this happen. I mean, my God.
Would we have ever gotten that RFC at all if it hadn't happened though? Would they have just argued themselves in circles for infinity?
Possibly. I mean, they do publish things eventually. It's just, it's herding cats. Engineers are the worst kind of cats to herd.
Of course, yeah. Getting what is the joke? If you have 3 engineers in a room, you have 4 different opinions.
Right. This is, I'm sure this is a familiar feeling to you and me, CJ, and to anybody who's written RFCs in their job. You're still writing, you're still coming up with the best way to do it, and you're watching it just get overtaken by events in real time as people do a completely different thing. And you realize, like, even if I finish this, it's going to be irrelevant by the time it's finished.
And you're kind of stuck in this position where you're like weirdly trying to get people to slow down on actually doing things so that you can finish writing about how to do the thing. Honestly, like I'm kind of like making fun of the IETF there here, but I am deeply sympathetic with this.
Absolutely.
Problem. They're like, we want to really think this through and like make sure that we're handling this technology in a responsible way. And meanwhile,
Microsoft's just like cookies for everyone.
Total chaos.
Yeah. It's very, very frustrating, and it gives me nightmares. Now, content publishers and browser vendors weren't the only ones keeping busy during this heady era of the mid to late 90s. As soon as Netscape Navigator introduced cookies in 94, immediately, and I mean immediately, ad networks look at this and realize how much fucking money this is going to make them. As long as they can make sure that this unverifiable transactions rule never gets implemented, they can start collecting browser histories for everyone on the web who loads their ads. So like, Alice goes to www.ferrets.com. Her browser loads an ad for ferret pajamas. That ad is hosted by a different domain, ad.doubleclick.net. She gets assigned a unique cookie for ad.doubleclick.net. And then the next day, Alice goes to, everyone's favorite website, fancykazoos.biz, and loads another ad. That's also from ad.doubleclick.net, which is the domain she has a cookie from earlier. And so now DoubleClick can be like, this is the person from earlier who likes ferrets. So the next time Alice loads the page, they can send her a targeted ad, which is a new concept for like a kazoo shaped like a ferret, or maybe a kazoo that a ferret can play. I don't know. Point is,
somehow there's crossover between these two interests.
Yeah, well, it's just Alice, but they know there's one person out there, and they can sell her this. The yield for this ad, these targeted ads, will be immense, like 10 times higher than the yield for a regular non-targeted ad. So if they can make this work, the model is going to become unbelievably lucrative for online ad platforms who, remember, are absolute shameless bottom feeders that shouldn't be allowed to exist.
This is again one of those stories of, much like Jira, of a tale of like with something with such good intentions. Like, we will have a way for clients and browsers to share state in this relatively privacy protecting way. That just kind of took a wrong turn somewhere.
It's very sad. It took a wrong turn in 1892 when Edward Bernays was born. Now, so the ad platforms aren't doing targeted ads right off the bat. It takes a while. You need some infrastructure to build to make that happen, which we'll talk about in part 2. But one of the things they do right away is they get together with each other and they start sharing cookies with each other in order to build more sophisticated models of consumers. Man, if only somebody could have predicted that they might do that. Maybe somebody Dutch. Oh well.
Yeah. What was the name of that guy? I've already forgotten.
Koen Holtman.
Before his time. I wonder if he ever looks back on that email and it's just like, wow.
If I were him, I would post it on the door to my office, just so everybody knows how right I was.
Framed. Never let anybody forget again how correct I was.
I would be so fucking smug, and nobody could talk to me. So anyway, by 1998, the ad networks are already building sophisticated user profiles based on shared data which of course has been collected invisibly and without consent. And I just, not to belabor the point, I just find this so repugnant. I mean, here we are, users of the web, and we're trying to go to websites. We're just trying to go learn about things that interest us on the web. Satisfy our curiosity by learning which is a beautiful thing. Maybe look at a little porn, but mostly we're reading Wikipedia or we're reading like encyclopedias or whatever. We're learning. We're learning about our bands, our favorite bands and stuff. The content publishers, the people making the websites, don't even know this is happening either. They're just trying to make a little money from advertisements while we download their content. And then these parasites, these absolute fucks, show up and turn the whole thing into a way to spy on us so they can more effectively sell us labubus.
Oh. In some ways, I feel like it's almost inevitable that something like that would have come up. But man, it's such a sad story of good intentions gone wrong.
Sure. Yeah, I can't. I'm not like. There's nobody who's come up in this story yet because we haven't been talking about the ad people who I would say like you ruined it all, right? Everybody was making reasonable decisions, and it all got corrupted because of the way we organize our society.
I mean, in some ways, I can't totally like. The vision of targeted advertising, at least to some extent, is like we will show you advertising for stuff that you're actually interested in.
Yeah. Right.
We'll, help you discover new things that you might not otherwise have come across because of your interests.
Yeah, that's how they want you to believe that they're thinking about it, right? But like,
I know that's not actually what they're thinking. It just makes it harder to ignore.
If it's a targeted ad, then it's harder to ignore, which is the point. But then that's the only thing I ever want to do to ads is ignore them, preferably not be shown them in the first place.
If there must be ads, at least let them be targeted is pretty grim.
Right.
Itself.
Right. Just make them.
Must there be ads?
Make them all be ads for cigarettes. Then I can get.
Everybody loves cigarettes.
I can get like very good at not looking at any picture of a cigarette that I see. So like, you may be wondering, wait, what about all that verifiable transaction stuff that was in the RFC? How is DoubleClick assigning all these third-party cookies? Aren't these unverifiable transactions? And they are. According to RFC 2109, if you didn't explicitly type ads.doubleclick.net into your browser address bar, then your browser should not accept cookies from ads.doubleclick.net. Sorry, not just should not, must not, in all caps. Right? That's how we do things in RFCs. If we really want something to never happen, we write must not in all caps.
Was it bolded though?
I don't know. I think they only had ASCII back then. So.
Oh, this is all plain text.
However, first of all, RFC 2109 isn't even out yet. They're doing this. They're doing all this. They're sharing the cookies before the RFC's even out. David Crystal's still trying to herd these goddamn cats, right? And second of all, even once RFC 2109 does come out, the browser companies are going to have basically zero interest in implementing it. I mean, certainly not Microsoft. Yeah. Microsoft has entered the advertising business themselves with MSN, which launched in 1995, and Netscape. I mean, Netscape's moving fast and breaking things. They're widely criticized for inventing their own de facto standards, like they did with cookies, and then just ignoring what the IETF thinks.
It was old as time.
Right.
Oh.
Right. Surely we would never do that anymore.
We in the modern world would never go ahead and ship something that hadn't been thoroughly examined by an RFC.
Certainly not. So basically, RFC 2109 comes out and everyone just ignores it. Actually, that's not true. Not everyone ignores it. The advertising industry goes fucking apeshit over it. Dave Crystal later wrote that the advertising networks felt that the language in RFC 2109 was a dagger aimed at the heart of their business. And they were kind of right. That is where the dagger was aimed. And that is exactly where the dagger should have gone, because fuck these companies. And for a while, it looked like the dagger might actually be driven home. And so the ad platforms banded together in November of 1999 to form a trade group called the Network Advertising Initiative. The very first version of the NAI's website promised forthcoming information on disclosure of data, notice and choice about personally identifiable information and ad delivery data, like who got what ad management and reporting data, and third-party compliance audits, presumably like checking if they're handling privacy appropriately. That's what they wanted. That's what they wanted the regulatory scheme for net online ads to be like. And I find it breathtaking how well these bullet points from 1999 describe the state of the web advertising accountability landscape in 2026. I mean, this is the regime that came to be. We got privacy policies, we got reporting, we got opt-out instead of opt-in. The only part that didn't really come true was the audits, because at least in the US, we never ended up passing any significant laws to regulate these dipshits anyway. So, some dagger.
Yeah, some dagger that's, not to belabor the analogy, but was turned aside by the armor of money.
Many such cases. Now, the IETF didn't just give up. Once it becomes clear that RFC 2109 is dead in the water, Crystal and Montulli write another RFC on cookies, RFC 2965, which supplants the earlier one in October of 2000. And this new RFC is accompanied by a companion RFC. They released two of them together as a twofer. The companion is called Use of HTTP State Management by Keith Moore and Ned Freed. And that's less of a technical specification and more of like a set of recommendations about how companies and people should use cookies and how they should not use them. So the technical one, RFC 2965, defines a new header to replace set cookie, which is called set cookie 2, and it has somewhat different behavior. And as a software engineer, I'm sure you've seen many examples of a new thing replacing the old thing being called the old thing 2, and you know about how well that generally works.
Either that, I feel like there's two possible outcomes of that naming scheme, and one is that there's a lot of questions in a few years about what happened to version 1 of this thing. Why do we call this thing 2? Or thing 2 never gets adopted at all.
Well, have you ever heard of set cookie 2?
And since I've never heard of set cookie 2, I feel like that's
yeah. Everybody was like, we already have cookies. They're working fine. Fuck off. The other one is very interesting. It's a very interesting read. It makes statements like HTTP state management must not, again, all caps, must not be used to leak information about the user or the user's browsing habits to other parties beside the user or service without the user's explicit consent. It also says it is generally inappropriate to use the HTTP state management protocol as an authentication mechanism. So basically, don't let cookies leak user data to third parties, and don't use cookies for authentication.
So we know how well that works.
we know now how well that works. These are the two most common things that cookies are used for on the modern web. This is what you use cookies for.
Yeah, I'm trying to imagine other use cases for cookies.
Right.
I'm sure there are some, but
yeah, you'd have to search pretty long to find other uses that are current for these things. That's what we use them for. Which is very funny that this is still the IETF's standard,
like official stance
on how cookies should be used. Yes.
So we've all just decided to politely ignore the.
Right. It reminds me of how Q-tips were never supposed to be inserted into your ear canal, but that's how literally everyone used them, and most people probably still do. So now they have this completely ineffectual warning on the box that nobody reads about how you should never stick a Q-tip in your ear.
Which everybody just promptly ignores because it feels great to stick a Q-tip in your ear.
It's awesome. It's awesome. And it feels great.
It's the best.
It feels great to send somebody an authentication cookie.
Similarly satisfying for the server, I'm sure.
Yeah. So if you ever hear the noises that servers make in the data center when they're sending people cookies, it's pretty obscene. So now we've witnessed the half-decade-long slow-motion train wreck in which cookies go from being a perfectly reasonable solution to a privacy challenge to being the keystone of the absolute privacy nightmare that is the modern web. We got to watch the piece of shit that is the advertising industry hit the fan of browser non-compliance, and now we know why everything's covered in shit. So next week, we'll talk about some of the efforts that we've undertaken as a society to get all this shit off ourselves. So look forward to that. How you doing, CJ?
I feel like I've really expanded my understanding of cookies today. I kind of love that the origin story for cookies is this back and forth between a bunch of engineers trying to stay ahead of trying to like run along ahead of the avalanche, so to speak, of people trying to make money off the internet.
It's so easy to imagine myself in their shoes, right? And how awful it would be.
I can also imagine myself in the shoes of like somebody working in one of these browser companies too, and being like, well, we can't wait for the committee to sign off on everything we do.
Right. And
trying to let people bid on auctions or whatever.
Right. Microsoft is bundling their browser with their operating system. Can they do that? That's crazy. Yeah. They're eating our whole entire market share. We don't have time to change the way cookies work. Are you fucking joking?
Participate in this, however many message long email thread about
right.
This RFC.
Well, this is one of the few Technology Blows episodes where I think the first part is more depressing than the second part. But I'll let you be the judge of that. Anyway, thank you for being here. Get some rest. I know. Thank you for being here when you're sick. I know that's not easy. I really appreciate you.
Yeah, this was a lot of fun. Hopefully I didn't cough too loudly.
No,
in a way that you can't edit.
You coughed it right the perfect volume. And thank you, listeners, for being here. If you like this show, please follow our social media. We're Tech Blows on Blue Sky and TikTok, Technology Blows on YouTube and LinkedIn, and we love you. Until next week, I'm Dan Slimman, and this is Technology Blows. See you around.